Today we're here for a masterclass, pivoting to an efficiency first sales org. Of course, before we dive in, I always want to start us off with a quick icebreaker. Today's question is going to be, what is your go-to comfort movie? Majan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, it's like this really not well-known rom-com with Sandra Bullock called 2 Weeks Notice. And I love it because
Mhm.
it's set in my favorite city, my city, New York. And it's about this woman who's just like very uptight and wanting to make sure she always does a perfect job and just learning to occasionally let go, that it's okay.
Love it. Love it. I think mine at this point, since I have a munchkin, it's got to be like jumping back and forth between like Encanto and like Ratatouille. That's kind of like I feel that that's like the go-to there. What about you, Elliot?
For me, it's I, Robot. As a kid, just Will Smith,
Oh,
robots, a little action, a little murder mystery. Just the perfect mix for me.
what's not to love?
Exactly. Okay. Okay, so it does seem like we have a few more people, so we're going to kick things off now. Of course,
Wonderful.
super excited to get into it. We're here today for pivoting to an efficiency first sales org, a masterclass. Excited for the content and takeaways everyone's going to be getting out of this event. Of course, today's event is brought to you by the team here at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the questions they'd struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners that they may not know about. We do that through live sessions like this, an online forum, and our quarterly summits. If you're not already a part of MSP, you're going to be invited to join after this event. Before we get into the event, do you want to go over some quick housekeeping notes? First of all, this event is being recorded. You're going to be able to access this recording and key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Second, if there's any questions for our panelists, please do use the Q&A function, and we're going to do our best to get to them during the event. Okay, Pete, going to hand things off to you. And take it away. Introduce.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Elliot, for setting this up and introducing us here. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. But hey, everyone. So this event is sponsored by Atrium. Atrium makes data-driven sales management software that helps AE, SDR, and AMCSM managers use data to improve team performance. And so essentially what Atrium does is it continuously monitors dozens and dozens of key AE and SDR KPIs and then proactively alerts managers when something is off with their reps and their teams and so on. And so what this means is that managers can get to coaching insights faster and drive positive behavior change and win, essentially make their teams better and more efficient. And one of the cool things about this is that you can actually set up your own free Atrium account in about 2 minutes with a read-only connection to your Salesforce account. So that's a little bit about us. Let's talk about who we are as people. My name is Pete Kazanjy. I'm one of the founders here at Atrium. Which I described earlier. Prior to Atrium, I started a recruiting software company called Talentpin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And Talentpin is really where I went from being a business generalist founder to our first seller, first sales manager, first sales leader, and then subsequent to that was responsible for new product sales at Monster Worldwide. After that, so after I left Monster, I wrote a book on modern sales called Founding Sales, on essentially startup sales, and started Modern Sales Pros. So that's a little bit about me. Think a little bit about sales here or there. And then joining me today is the illustrious Majan Phillips, who works on Atrium's implementation team, or as we like to call it, Atrium University, where you get your data-driven sales management PhD. Majan, you want to share with folks a little bit about what you spend your time doing and what you did prior to Atrium?
Absolutely, Pete. So, as Pete said, I am the manager of the implementation team here at Atrium, or as he often calls me, the Dean of Atrium U,
Dean.
which is a term I love coming from an education background. So we spend our days making sure that the processes are as efficient as they can be here at Atrium, and getting people educated in the platform and getting them really quick successes within the Atrium platform. Prior to Atrium, as I said, I was in education. I actually owned a music school for about 10 years, but am excited to now be in sales and, in my spare time, talking all things sales management, analytics, and revenue.
The dean of Atrium U. It is true, because there are a lot of SDR AE managers and sales leaders to teach about the the data-driven management gospel, for sure. Speaking of which, one of the offers that we're offering to folks who are attending today, I don't have mine on here, but it's around here somewhere. We have these really wonderful sales nerd hoodies that we are giving out to folks, along with a combination of that, and then some of our data-driven sales management metrics inspection desk references, kind of like have them bundled together there. Just a little bit of celebration of people who recognize the combination of that's, sales success is a combination of art and science together there. So I think we're going to drop a link in the chat here for folks to sign up for that hoodie. If you'd like, you have to make sure to note your size. And of course, all we ask for in exchange is a quick chat about how you're doing data-driven sales management at your organization right now. So that should be pretty fun. Cool. So what we're going to be talking about today is pivoting to an efficiency-first sales organization. Efficiency is hot these days, right? It's just like Zoolander, right? So hot right now. And organizations are pivoting from a growth first to an efficiency first mindset. And what that means is oftentimes finding new baselines for sales motions, driving better effort and efficiency in the AE and SDR teams, and then potentially right sizing your sales organization, right? Like compressing the size of the sales organization in order to do the same amount of what you were doing, or maybe more, with fewer human resources, and improve the efficiency of your org, the cash efficiency of your org in so doing. So first, we're going to kind of talk about this notion of pivoting from growth first to efficiency first here. And I'm super excited to have Majan here to share a lot of her experiences with our hundreds and hundreds of customers in that regard. So I think that, like a lot of organizations, when kind of contending with economically turbulent times, require kind of like a shift in focus from what is typically referred to as like growth at all cost to an efficiency first mindset. And so, this is like a little bit of a kind of like a juxtaposition here of how things like kind of rolled previously and how people are thinking about things in the new world. So, maybe in the old world, there's lots of marketing spend, which is driving a lot of inbound leads. In the new world, maybe that marketing spend has been cut or dramatically reduced. So that means inbound is drying up. This has implications for like SDR behavior and also maybe AE prospecting, right? So it's like there was the things that happened in the past, and then there's like current reality, and then the current reality begets things that we have to do as a result. So another example of this might be like, in the old world, all your prospects maybe were a little bit more flush with cash. This led to loose prospect budgets and then high win rates. Maybe in the new world, things are tighter. And what that means is that your win rates are compressed. So that means that AEs have to do more activity, or they need to do a better job and be more crisp around their sales motion. And so this kind of goes up and down the gamut here. I'm not going to rehearse these all for folks, but the shift impacts many different metrics that AEs and SDRs have to contend with, and then they have to change their behavior as a result of to react to that. Majan, when you think about your customers that you've been interacting with, which of these kind of like pop up as kind of like most relevant right now?
I think it's sort of the sprinting away from a bare operational tempo. Our processes and everything just have to get much faster. And we keep hearing that every op is precious, right? Like that's sort of the key phrase right now.
Got it. Yeah, I love the sprinting away from a bear, because it's like, oh yeah, it's like totally okay if I have 7 customer facing meetings a week. It's like, yeah, that's like you're like working half a job there. Like, come on, let's fill up your calendar, right? And so when you're pivoting from growth at all costs to efficiency first, there are a number of things that you need to be doing there. Like one, you might need to figure out new baselines, like kind of an expectation on new normal. The second thing you might do is drive better effort and efficiency. Right, so higher levels of effort. So you don't walk away from a bear, you sprint away from a bear, and higher levels of efficiency as well. So doing a much better job of multi-threading into your opportunities or multi-threading in your accounts or what have you. And then also potentially putting leverage and operations efficiency into your team as well, and then right sizing your team. So let's go ahead and talk about these like kind of new baselines here. So one thing that when you think about like the physics of your business, right? Oftentimes your prior business has a steady state KPIs that describe your sales motion for both AEs and SDRs. And so when something shifts in the economy, that will oftentimes change those baseline KPIs, right? So as an example, if in a prior world you might have win rates of like, I don't know, like 30% or 25%, and in a economically distressed in an economically stressed environment, you might those win rates might be down more at like the 15% rate or maybe a 10% rate or what have you. And so you just have to be aware of the fact that those baselines have changed, figure out those new baselines, set new goals and potentially quotas based on this, and then enforce those new baselines accordingly, right? And so the first step that we're going to talk about here is how do we find those new baselines. So when you think about the KPIs that you might want to re-benchmark there, it's probably like the meat and potatoes of the relevant KPIs in question for AEs or SDRs. For AEs, that would probably be things like bookings, new opportunity inflow, win rate, average selling price, and deal cycle. So essentially just like the revenue formula there. For the SDR team, that would probably be, and again, this is like at a basic level, opportunities, the pipeline formula. So like opportunities created, new accounts engaged with, ops created, and per account engaged with, which is kind of like SDR win rate, if you will, there. Majan, when you think about the kind of the exercise that a lot of organizations are doing when re-benchmarking their teams, which like are there other metrics that people oftentimes need to re-benchmark as well?
I mean, I know you and I know you're going to get to it, but we just don't have any time for bad pipe hygiene anymore either. Just making sure that you're touching your ops and your accounts and working them consistently.
Good point, right? So it's like, hey, we used to maybe have an expectation, or like maybe we didn't even pay attention to untouched opportunity levels previously. Like now, all of a sudden, we're going to scrutinize that. We're going to, scrutinize that like a hawk. Cool. So a couple different ways of maybe looking at that. This is an example of a team's ability to have initial meetings, and so what you can kind of see here is a dramatic decline from the team's total first meetings per week from 17 to down to 11 here. You can imagine the same sort of situation with like win rates or what have you. SDR example here, this is a email engagement rate, which is essentially a fancy version of email response rate. And so if you have prospects who are less open to if they know that they don't have like the CFO is making it such that they don't have any money to spend, well, guess what? They're probably gonna be like less responsive to that SDR outreach there. And so what you need to do is just go ahead and like look at how those metrics have changed. This is something that Atrium is very useful for because it allows you to just kind of see where these metrics were at and then now are at, if you will. And then you can use those in order to calculate the expected amount of bookings that you might get out of an account executive in a given time period based on those updated metrics, whether that's win rate, ASP, opportunity inflow, et cetera there. And of course, like the flip side of that is like with SDRs, right? How many opportunities are we able to generate? Well, that's going to be the result of the pipeline formula as well that we would then use our re-benchmarking to cascade that to our new expected opportunity creation volumes there. Cool. So the one thing to kind of think about there is when you're figuring out those new KPIs, there's probably an appropriate sampling period for to understand like what that new normal looks like there. You can use your existing metrics harness to do this. Of course, Atrium can help you do this very quickly by setting up an account. And so, some examples of what this might look like in practice is, again, that SDR email engagement rate change there. Maybe like in this case that this is a different metric for SDRs, is activity per opportunity created. So it's an efficiency metric there that would be impacted by the level of responsiveness and openness by prospects. For AEs, it might be that those meetings on the calendar, win rate, etc. The other thing to note is that like you really want to make sure that it is an average. And what I mean by that is like you want to look at the per rep performance. So like if all of your reps are declining fairly substantially, then like then that might be that actually might be a new normal sort of situation, versus if you only have like one person whose performance has declined substantially, or like one or two people whose performance has declined substantially. Cool. So let's talk about like my favorite topic here, which is using this as an opportunity. So like using these situations as an opportunity to kind of like rebase people's expectations around levels of effort, and then also levels of efficiency in AE and SDR teams. And so the thing that you need to think about there is, what is the correct level of effort on your team? Because oftentimes, like in good times, levels of effort can kind of like not really be regarded very substantially, like, or maybe not even instrumented. We actually see this a lot with our customers. Maybe 2 years ago or what have you, people be like, yeah, I don't really necessarily like pay attention to how many customer facing meetings my account executives are having, or we don't really measure SDR calling activity or what have you. As long as they're getting the opportunities on the board, they can do it however they want. They can do it on LinkedIn, they can do it on email, etc. And then now, when that things have changed pretty substantially, folks are like really scrutinizing and saying, hey, you know what? I need to measure the correct level of effort in order to ensure that I'm getting productivity out of all out of my staff. And so typically oftentimes that can be a little bit like of a a touchy conversation perhaps in a prior time. So like this is a good opportunity to kind of rebase things and say like, hey, look, like the entire industry is kind of getting shellacked right now. What we have to do is we're going to use this as an opportunity to refocus on what is the correct level of effort, and kind of set new expectations there. And the same is true with respect to efficiency levels, right? Like Majan was noting this earlier. Oh yeah, you know what, like best effort, opportunity management, et cetera, versus like, hey, look, man, like we can't have any opportunities in your pipe that are that haven't been touched for more than 15 days and then don't have a meeting on the calendar in the future, because we're just going to give those opportunities to another rep. And then you have to instrument that and enforce that. Majan, I know that you kind of talked about efficiency levels, or kind of like level of efficiency metrics, especially as relates to pipe hygiene. When you think about like a lot of the customers that you're interacting with now coming through Atrium University, how are they kind of changing the way that they think about level of effort?
Yeah, I think that for almost everybody coming through right now, just understanding like complete activity going on. So meetings on calendar, emails being sent, engagement that's happening at that basis is sort of top of mind, but also like new pipeline inflow, right? Because that's starting to take a dip. So making sure that they have those levers that they can pull to ensure that there's still pipeline coming in, even from the AE side for a lot of orgs that maybe they didn't worry as much about previously. And then like we talked about the hygiene piece of it, and making sure, as you were just talking about, the next steps, we are putting together views every day where it's like, is there a next step on the calendar? Because that's absolutely top of mind.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, and so these are a lot of the metrics that you can think about as relates to level of effort and level of what I call excellence, or kind of efficiency metrics. So those level of effort metrics would be things on the SDR side. They'd be kind of like pure activity things like email volume. Calling volume is a great example as well. Oftentimes SDR organizations are loath to engage in calling because it kind of feels scary, and maybe the level of coaching hasn't been put in there. And so, you know, making sure that you're calling your leads and you're calling your contacts can be a really great way of driving better performance or better better outputs from those from those inbound leads there. And the same is true on the AE side as well. Like, you know, level of effort metrics there might be things like customer facing meeting volume, account volume, email volume, et cetera. And then the efficiency metrics would be all those quality metrics, like the level of excellence. So it might be on the AE side, it would probably be win rate. It would be untouched opportunities, stuck ops, the conversion rate between stages of opportunities there. On the SDR side, it would be things like email responsiveness rate, like how well you're getting your prospects to respond to you, how well you're multi-threading those accounts, right? How many of those accounts or so how many contacts are you engaging on a per account basis, and things like, are you touching the account frequently as opposed to, like, you know, touching it once and then kind of moving on with things there. Cool. So let's talk about standard, kind of like new standards of level of effort. So again, moving from that marathon pace to being the quote unquote chased by a bear pace. So the first thing what we're going to do is, like, we're going to actually pay attention to level of efforts, right? So now is the opportunity to instrument it and set clear expectations on level of effort metrics, whereas like maybe historically that wasn't the case. Like, now you have an opportunity to do so. What those might look like in the AE side is it might be, you know, customer facing meetings or prospect facing meetings, external meetings, email volume, opportunity touches, things like that. Oftentimes organizations are a little more laissez-faire with respect to activity volumes or like activity instrumentation on the AE team. It's like sales is a question of a high quantity of high quality selling behavior, and so instrumenting that and driving more of that activity is ultimately the thing that's going to make your reps more successful. And the same is true over on the SDR side as well. So email volume, call volume, account volume, etc. One thing that you can do, and like if you haven't done this, like we work with a lot of organizations, and it's like hilarious to see. It's like absolutely hilarious to see how tightly correlated top performers are with the highest activity folks that are in the that are on the team. And so what you can do is you can index off of those top performers and use that as a mechanism by which to say what those new levels of, like, you know, expectations might be there. So like this right here is a screenshot of a this is a screenshot of a customer facing meeting volume card here, where you have this is an entire sales team right here, and what you can see that there's a handful of top performers right here that are kind of like, you know, this person's way up here, but you can kind of see this cluster of folks here. Then you have like kind of your middle performers, then you have your laggards right here. And so what's kind of crazy is you can see that the top performers are like a third higher than some of the mid tier. And so like that level of variation, like that actually will end up having serious impact when aggregated up over 10 reps, 20 reps, 40 reps, 80 reps, 100 reps, like driving 10% or 20% more customer facing meeting volume just by like measuring it and setting expectations that, like, hey, everybody should be seeking to be up here with these top performers, even if we don't get there, can deliver in aggregate very compelling outputs. You can see the same thing over here with respect to accounts touched. Again, these are all the same type of rep here. There's really no delta between the different types of folks here. And again, you can see that the top performers are substantially higher than other folks. So just by measuring this and then presenting it to the team and setting expectations, you can start pulling the team up up that performance curve and driving more performance there. Actually, speaking of that, Majan, kind of like mechanisms by which to circulate this information and have it and circulate this information and drive reactive behavior to it. What are some of the best mechanisms that you've seen for organizations to like make this part of their operating rhythm such that it can like be in the face and be in the eyes of their teams and their reps?
I think that creating a leaderboard is obviously sort of the first thing, right? Pick out like 2 or 3 top metrics that you're really going to focus on, and then showcase what the top performers are doing, sending it out weekly, talking about it during one-on-ones, team meetings. What we're hearing a lot these days too is performance management, right? So sometimes it's even like managing certain underperformers out of the organization increases the rate of work and effort that the rest of the team is doing, because it changes the average and it makes everybody sort of push each other to a higher level. So we're seeing a lot of things like that happening within the customers. But I think starting with that like leaderboard gamification and making it fun and having everybody lift each other up to that highest level.
I like it. Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on here around on right sizing sales organizations. And I think the other thing too there is we do another master class on performance management. I forget what it's called. It's like fix or fire or something. But I think a really important thing here is like your top performers, like, they like being top performers, but like nobody likes kind of like the notion of carrying the team. And like obviously in sales, there's performance compensation. And so people get compensated for their outperformance, but at the same time, like it can like feel not amazing to be carrying the rest of the organization. And so what you want to do is make sure that you are performance managing and setting those expectations for the rest of the team in order to, because otherwise your top performers are, they're going to be a little grumpy about the fact that you're tolerating underperformers and people who are mailing it in. And so the same is true over here on SDR on the SDR side, where you can look at email volume, call volume, but again, it's pretty funny to see, regardless of the size or like the discipline of the reps in question, you get these folks who are like these higher performing folks are up near the top, and you get these like groups of buckets, and if you can just kind of cheat folks a little bit up right across an entire organization, across 10, 20, 40, like 100 reps, that delivers like very material changes. So let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about standards of excellence and efficiency. So we were talking about level of effort earlier, but that's only half of the equation. Sales is about a high quantity of high quality selling behavior, whether you're talking about AEs or SDRs. And so what we want to do here is like make sure that also our execution is highly excellent as well. And so what those would be things like paying attention to or like the AE level of excellence metrics would be things like untouched opportunities, contacts, like the number of contacts they're engaging per account, the health of the opportunities, the opportunity conversion rates. On the SDR side, it would be things like email response rates, the ratio between accounts touched to opportunities created, touches per account, etc., and also contacts per account. So those are different kind of like levels or like metrics that you would pay attention to for level of excellence there. Cool. And so what you can kind of see here is like this is an example of AE level of excellence metric of untouched opportunities, and you can see again there's like pretty substantial differentiation between here, where the top performing reps are down here. They have few, so like less is better in this situation. You have these people that are at the bottom here have fewer untouched opportunities over this time period. Then you have like a middle pack here, and then you have a set of folks that are actually like pretty bad, not on top of their opportunities there. And so again, driving people down in this direction by measuring it and then putting it in front of folks to say, hey, look, you have to be on top of your opportunities here, can drive pretty substantial change in the organization. The same is true with respect to multi-threading. as well. Like, are we doing a good job of multi-threading within our opportunities and engaging with a high number of contacts per opportunity or per account? And the same can be true with respect to opportunity conversion rate as well, where what you can see here is like this on the y-axis here is we have the percentage of conversion from one stage to the next. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. And you can see that some of the folks here have much higher conversion rates all throughout the pipe as compared to some of these folks down here who seem to struggle with getting their opportunities out of stage 1, out of stage 2, out of stage 3, and what have you. This is a little, Majan, this is a little bit more advanced than some of the other ones. Like, it's pretty basic to be like, hey, look, man, like, you're untouched. That's too many untouched opportunities. Let's get on top of this. How do you see organizations using opportunity conversion rates in order to measure where their AEs are having issues in their pipe management, or sorry, in their sales motion, excuse me?
Yeah, I think right now is we're like retooling and reprocessing and thinking through how the sales motion should work. A lot of managers are using this as sort of like their own personal benchmark to be like, what stage is troublesome? And then
Yep.
should we reconsider what that stage actually means? Should we be rewriting the talk track that goes along with it? Like, what's the hang up here? And then just really trying to like zoom in and dial in on that. Or if it's just like one person who seems to really dip down, then that's
Yep.
a performance management piece. It's just understanding whether it's the group or an individual.
Right. And so, like, in this case, what we can see here is that there's actually substantial differences per rep. Like with our little blue person here, Christopher Robin, we can see that his opportunity conversion rate is pretty low at the beginning, but then jumps up here in stage 3 and stage 4. So that this might be a situation where he has like a hitch in his giddy up here at stage 2 and is struggling to get things out of stage 2. Whereas our purple and pink ones here, Friend Al and Hiram Flaversham, and Friend Al here, these folks kind of have consistent opportunity conversion rates issues kind of across the board there. And so, like in this case, this feels like reps who like don't get the sales motion. This Christopher Robin rep right here, he or she seems like they have just like an issue with this stage right here. And what you don't have is you don't have the organization in general, like broadly having a challenge with like, everyone has a problem getting out of this, this stage or what have you here. So like, this is more about coaching up those individuals as opposed to like, there's a problem across the sales motion here. And the same is true over here in SDR land. So we've got SDR, email responsiveness rates here. And so what we can kind of see here is like you have a couple folks who are pretty low with respect to their email responsiveness rates. And so what that would typically allow us to understand is like, hey man, like what's going on here? Is this person like, are their subject lines poor? Are they not using the right sequences? Are they targeting the wrong personas? Something's going on here that such that these folks have a dramatically lower responsiveness rate than these other folks, and we got to get on top of that in order to fix that. And the same is true over here with respect to like account to op creation rates as well, where again, like the number of accounts that reps are interacting with as compared to how many ops that they're creating. You can see again that this Mr. Jolly right here and Friar Tuck are dramatically lower than the rest of their peers. And so what we can do is like, if we can figure out what it is that's making it such that Chef Boosh here, Wilbur Robinson, and Dr. David Q. Dawson here are having such higher conversion between their accounts that they've touched and their accepted and the opportunities that they are creating, that can help cheat the rest of the organization up and change the story there with respect to level of execution. And actually what's kind of funny here is you can kind of see maybe the little bit of the answer there, where David Q. Dawson and David Q. Dawson here and some of these other folks are way more on top of their accounts because they're touching them way more frequently. And that might actually be an example of good leading indicators of driving better execution, which will then of course drive better outputs downstream there. So one thing to, and actually before I move on, Majan, we were kind of talking about AE stuff here previously around diagnosing kind of the hitch in an AE's sales motion and then coaching it up. How have you seen, I know that you and your team work with a bunch of pretty substantial SDR organizations. What have you seen there with respect to people diagnosing the issues of their SDR teams and coaching up appropriately?
Yeah, I think these conversion metrics are great. I think one that we've been using a lot is activity per op created. So the other thing with that is really trying to dial in, because inbound is sort of drying up across the board. So there's like outbound calling efforts that are happening at every size organization right now, and understanding like the success of calls compared to the success of email campaigns, and really trying to like dial into that and lean into what's working to be more efficient with an SDR's time.
Mm-hmm. How have you seen people like coach to that with respect to like driving more calling behavior?
So a lot of times, again, and I keep going back to it, it's a lot of just starting with the leaderboard of being like, look, this person can do it, so everyone can do it. And then just making sure that you are doing call coaching and listening in, and making sure that the scripts are just really well understood and the value props really well, proposed right from the start.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Um, Wonderful. So the other thing that you can do too is you can do bottom up LOE and level of excellence setting. So what we were just kind of looking at here was looking at the top performers and saying, hey, look, like kind of what Majan was saying, here are the folks that are top performing right here. These are the benchmarks that we expect other folks to be at, or like, some subset of that. And so then the other way you can approach this is by doing kind of bottoms up. You can say, hey, for account executives, what that might be is, how much time do we have in, how much time do we have in a week, as an example? And then as a result, how many customer facing meetings can we do during that time period, right? Like what is the other work that our AEs need to be spending their time doing? Do they need to be doing RFPs? Do they need to be putting together proposals? Oh no, there's not an RFP process. There's not a formal proposal process, things like that. Okay, well in that case, they probably can be doing more customer facing meetings, as an example, right? And so just kind of like going bottoms up and saying, hey, this is how much time we have in the week. How much, how much customer facing meetings should we expect the RAs to be doing? How many opportunities, how many opportunity touches should we be expecting? And just kind of like doing that from the bottoms up versus just kind of looking at the top down. You can do the same thing with the SDR teams as well. The next thing that you can do is or ought to be doing is implementing a metrics harness. This is something Majan keeps referring to, is using this information using information to then measure these various levels of effort and excellence metrics in order to ensure that we are where we need to be from a performance standpoint. Kind of the two biggest things there is really just visualization. So building the relevant reporting and dashboarding such that it can be visually inspected. And then the second thing there is just making sure that that's being distributed as much as possible. So it's insufficient to say like, hey, cool, like we built a bunch of reports, yay, right? Like we built a bunch of reports and we're on our merry way. Like the joke I like to say is that if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it make any noise? Similarly, like if you have an SDR activity dashboard or an AE, prospecting dashboard and no one looks at it, do the AEs actually do any prospecting? Right? So that's a really important thing to make sure, like visualization and then distribution and consumption of it is super important. And so distribution and consumption is not like, hey, cool, like we have some leaderboards up in the office, right? Because maybe a lot of people are not at the office anymore, but it's like weaving it into your operating rhythm. Majan, obviously, like Atrium University spends a lot of time helping organizations weave data-driven behavior into their operating rhythm. Can you share a little bit about like how you see people successfully doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as far as the operating rhythm is concerned, we absolutely want to get the information to them, at least on a weekly basis. Usually it's prior to like a team meeting. Another way that managers will do it is to make sure that the views are always accessible via like bookmarks in the browser, and also like linking them into the meeting agendas, and then taking screenshots of the metrics and time stamping, right? Week over week. Like, here's where we were last week, here's where we are this week. Did we see improvement? And then celebrating that, or did things go off the rails and we need to like reset?
Yep, for sure. Yep. So it's all about distribution and making sure that people like it's top of mind and in front of folks. Some kind of ways that I like to make sure or like advocate that folks do distribution is like automated distribution. So like making sure that broadcasts are happening. That making sure that broadcasts are happening, that things are being distributed to the sales team, to the SDR team, etc. Um, and then also meetings-based consumption, which you kind of referred to earlier there. Kind of some examples of like really great kind of improved behavior that we've seen in the sales team on customer team sales teams that work with Atrium here, as is we've seen anywhere between doubling of meeting volumes and dramatic reduction of pipeline hygiene issues in certain organizations. Again, like substantial pipeline hygiene improvement on teams, on Staffbase's team, and then moreover, Staffbase, another team, WorkRamp's team, and another substantial improvement in AE prospecting activity by on some teams as well. Majan, where are the kind of the biggest like areas of focus where you see your customers looking to change, like to drive higher performance out of?
Yeah.
Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think I lost the last part of the question, but people are especially focused, as you've talked about here, on activities and prospecting. But then on top of that, it's really like time, right? Like making sure
Mhm.
that things aren't getting stuck anywhere, and like time and stage is moving through. An average deal cycle is, speeding, trying to make sure that velocity is happening, and then those conversion rates that we were talking about before. So I think, prospecting and efficiency and activities, and then just the velocity aspect, main things.
Yep, for sure. Sounds like New York there. Um, Awesome. So then let's talk about our kind of a last topic here, which is essentially right sizing your sales organization. Um, cool. So oftentimes where when it comes to driving more efficiency, it can make sense to right size your sales organization. And so what that might look like is reducing the number of people in the organization in order to make more out of your existing like the number of opportunities that you have coming into your pipe, or sorry, in your organization's pipe. And of course, if you're going to be reducing the size of your sales organization, there's of course a bunch of questions around like what's the right size, who should go, et cetera. And you should be attacking those in a very data-driven way. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So first, when you're thinking about who should go, first, of course you're going to be looking at outputs there. So for account executives, that's going to be bookings. For SDRs, it's going to be meetings and opportunity creation. You're going to want to make sure that you use a long enough sampling period so like noise isn't tripping you up. And also what you want to do is make sure that you're not being tripped up by underperforming AEs that have a single deal that potentially like drives a very high like quote unquote saves them. So these are just a couple of different things to be kind of paying attention to. And then when you're kind of cascading through that and looking at who should potentially go, first you want to start with people that have like a very clear will and skill problem. And then so people who have, when you think about kind of like metrics that you're evaluating and kind of like performance that you're evaluating, it's will and skill are kind of like a combination of there's will issues, which is like level of activity, things like that, and then there's skill issues, which would be like conversion rates, etc. email engagement rates, things like that. And so folks that have will and skill issues, those are folks that obviously are going to be the first ones out the door. Then what you should do is you should move to will issues. So, or reps that typically have will deficits, those folks, they're probably going to be the most challenging to remediate. They may not actually enjoy the work, and it's kind of like pushing a boulder uphill. And then skill issues, like while you still might need to address them, what you want to be able to do, like you can upskill people that do have the will. And so this is why, like, you want to start with these folks as folks that you're potentially going to offboard, then move to these folks, and then if you still need to offboard more folks, move to these folks right here. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go through what that might look like in practice. And so so we're going to do kind of like a little bit of a case study here. So this is a 6-month sampling period of attainment for a mid-market sales team. And so what you can see here is you have 3 reps who look like they might be reduction in force candidates here. So, over the same time period, these reps right here, this one, and this one. So Mr. Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumbo are substantially lower than some of these other reps in question. This rep right here is in ramp, we still might want to pay attention to. And so not only are we going to look at bookings, as we kind of noted earlier, we also are going to look at wins, because we don't want to have a situation where someone's like getting bailed out as a result of them having like a substantially large deal. And so conveniently, like Mr. Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumbo here all kind of see like they are low with respect to wins as well. Little Debbie is like particularly low here. So it seems like she might be having some larger deals that are like making her look better than she otherwise would be. So those folks look like are kind of our RIF candidates there. And then the next thing we would look at is like what that consistency looks like over time. If you have somebody who's just like maybe their most recent quarter was problematic, we might give them a pass on that because they've otherwise been a very consistent performer. And so, if we look at the person in the blue here, Mr. Woolensworth, right? So he's consistently low, right? So consistently low performer here. This purple rep here, Little Debbie, she starts low, gets a little bit higher, and then now has deteriorated again pretty substantially. This rep right here, Jerry Jumbo, has a little bit of a potentially lagged ramp there. And so what we don't see right here is a situation where somebody is, like consistently high performing and then like had a little bit of a dip that would have like put them into this group of folks here. So we've essentially back checked that these folks right here, Mr. Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumbo, look like they're probably like solid candidates there, right? And the same is true over here on wins as well. So then the next thing we would do, so like these are output metrics that we're looking at, right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to evaluate will metrics, right? So in this case, what we can see is that Mr. Woolensworth is pretty low with respect to customer-facing meeting volume. What's interesting is this Little Debbie RIF candidate here actually has surprising high activity. So that indicates to me that she actually has substantial, her will metrics are a little bit better there. And again, Jerry Jumbo is like kind of light there. So 2 of these candidates, RIF candidates, Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry Jumbo here, both are kind of like not really passing the will test, if you will. Whereas Little Debbie here, who otherwise we might be a little worried about, seems to have surprising high activity right there. And so, and then of course, like another great example of a will metric here would be AE accounts, or like the number of accounts that these reps are touching. And again, you can kind of see these guys are not really hitting the ball out of the park with respect to their activity there. What's kind of interesting is Little Debbie is light on account touches, even though she's having a lot of customer facing meetings here. Again, this might indicate to us like a skill problem where she's having lots of like 3rd, 4th, 5th meetings that aren't necessarily going anywhere. But again, like not a lot of prospecting behavior going on here. And then again, what we would look at is like we would look at trends for these meetings. to see if there's any sort of like behavior happening there. And so like with respect to Mr. Woolensworth here, we can see kind of consistently low meeting activity. And with Jerry Jumbo, we can actually see degrading meeting activity. So again, one of our RIF candidates, Jerry Jumbo here, actually has degrading like will metric of customer facing meeting activity over time, which of course is like really a red flag there. So and then the last thing we might look at here would be a skill metric where we can say, hey, look, are these people, if for whatever reason, are there people who are dramatically low here that should also be a RIF candidate? We can see that Mr. Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumbo are like, they're not dramatically lower than anybody else. They're kind of like in the mix. So this just kind of tells us that it does seem like it's really like skill issue. There doesn't look to be anyone who has a dramatically lower win rate in here that would potentially flag to us a potential another RIF candidate there. And then the last thing that we would look at is we would look forward and see, is there anybody who like from a go forward standpoint has a dramatically lower forward forecast, because those would probably be the folks that we might think about potentially offboarding there. And so in summary, what we've got here, based on kind of like what we've seen, it would seem to indicate to us that all of our reps, like based on meeting volume, they don't really seem like we have folks that are over capacity. So there are a bunch of reps that like have slack on the team. And so we can redirect some of these opportunities from folks with lower win rates to folks like Principal Major here, or Chair Mouse, or Alice Bluebonnet, who have higher win rates. Like we'll probably end up getting more bookings out of the team with fewer salary expense there. And so it seems from what we've seen that Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry Jumbo both seem to indicate a consistently low level of effort with respect to meetings and account interaction. Little Debbie's like high meeting volume indicates that she has the will to execute, but there's probably an opportunity for upskilling there. It doesn't really look like there's a lot of differentiation among the win rate for for the RIF candidates either. And so if the sales team needed to reduce headcount, it's probably Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry Jumbo that would probably be the right reps to reduce there, right? So again, Mr. Woolensworth and Mr. Woolensworth here and Jerry Jumbo are both the folks that kind of seem like they're lower opportunity. Like Little Debbie definitely is on the bubble here, but by virtue of the fact that she's higher activity, it seems like there's an opportunity for upskilling there. Again, this kind of depends on what the level of reduction on the organization needs to be, but that would kind of, based on the information that we have in hand, it seems like that would be the right approach there, would be to offboard the folks that are low performing from an output standpoint, but then also seem to be lacking those will metrics as well. Majan, I know that was kind of a lot. What would you add to this?
Oh man, I think you've covered it. And we at Atrium have actually helped people with this. And I think just on top of that, and you've done a little bit of it, Pete, in these slides as well, just showing over time. I think the degradation is a huge part, because that kind of means that it might be mutual, that maybe they aren't necessarily loving the job anymore either. But just trying to see like what's happened over time and trying to really identify through the metrics whether it is will or skill, because like you were saying, will is absolutely the thing that we can't teach, right? That you just have to come to work with the desire to want, and then we can teach skill.
Yep, for sure. Cool. Well, I think that's everything that we had to cover today. Again, folks, if you'd like to get one of your own Sales Nerd hoodies here and a couple of our laminate desk references, we would love to send those out to you there, folks. We're just going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat for folks to go ahead and sign up for one of those. Again, all we ask in return is a quick chat on how your organization does data-driven sales management. Oh, hi, Elliot. You're back.
I am. Yeah, thank you so much, Pete. We're gonna wrap things up now. Of course, want to thank everyone for attending. Always love having you guys here. A big thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Atrium. Make sure to check them out. Link to their website is going to be in the chat. Let me grab that real quick. All right. Here we go, guys. Link is in the chat. Big thank you to Pete and Ms. John for providing the content. Recordings and key takeaways are going to be available on the page shortly. Also, don't forget to check out our upcoming events, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.